let's talk about video game soundtracks. Koji Kondo's theme for Super Mario Bros. Easily the most famous piece of video game music that has ever existed, and also did wonders for the future growth of video game music as well. It's simple, but it's catchy, it's iconic, and everyone remembers it. Because once it gets in your head, it's pretty hard to get it out. And let's talk about the other Mario games as well, because I think the other Mario games also have their fair share of great original music. And Super Mario Bros. 3 is easily my favorite. I just love the music throughout the entire game. I mean, all the different worlds have different music with different thematic focus. And it's really based on the kind of world that it is and the kind of level that you're playing, and the music changes. But my favorite has to be the overworld theme. It's just such a bundle of joy, and it just makes me so happy every time I listen to it. But Mario, being the big franchise that it is, right, it has a lot of spin-offs, because if there's money, why not make it? And to be fair, a lot of these spin-offs are pretty great and are classics in their own right. For example, Yoshi's Island and the subsequent Yoshi games, which aren't quite as much of a classic as Yoshi's Island is, but are still pretty fun nevertheless. And they have a very cute aesthetic, and the music follows the aesthetic really closely. They make some really cute music that's really nice to listen to, really cute and pleasant music. But we're talking about Mario so much now, and we just have to talk about Sonic. It's natural, because Sonic is Mario's biggest competitor. It was Mario's biggest competitor. And Sonic represented a fresh image. Sega wanted to be different, wanted to distinguish itself from Nintendo, and make a character and a style of game that is just a little bit more confident, cocky, and aggressive. And that's the kind of music that Sonic has. I mean, Masato Nakamura's music for Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 in particular are just amazing. They're this really fast, energetic, and just explosive and endlessly fun and entertaining music, and just constantly entertaining. And they really do feel like a fresh new sound compared to Mario. It's a very different kind of sound. And Sega Genesis is also a stronger console than the Super Nintendo, so they could produce better music. And let's talk about Sonic Mania as well, because Sonic Mania is such a good comeback for the Sonic series, the comeback that it always needed, but the Sonic team could never figure out, and they gave it to a fan, and now the fan figured it out, and that's why we got Sonic Mania. And T-Lope's music for Sonic Mania is very faithful to the original. It really feels like something that Masato Nakamura could have done, but at the same time it has some elements to it that feel very modern. It feels very fresh, and I hear a little bit of Yuzo Koshiro in there. I'm not sure if that's intentional. And speaking of Yuzo Koshiro, let's talk about all the other good Sega soundtracks, because there's a lot. I may not be able to cover all of them, but the Space Channel 5 soundtrack, really funky, really dancey. Dreams soundtrack, Nights into Dreams, more straightforward kind of pop music, but still really fun nevertheless. And my favorite out of these three, and any other Sega soundtrack apart from Sonic, is Outrun. The synthwave soundtrack in Outrun is so iconic that it spawned off a genre of music that is called Outrun. Seriously, the whole genre is called Outrun. That's pretty amazing. And let's talk about Donkey Kong now, because we talked about Mario, Sonic, and it's only natural that we talk about another platforming icon. And Donkey Kong may not be on the same level as Mario or Sonic, and it may not be as hard-hitting, as impactful as both of those games were during their time. But Donkey Kong still has its audience for sure, and there's a lot of people out there that really, really love Donkey Kong, and it's also widely acclaimed as a classic. And another thing that's the classic is the soundtrack from Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 by David Wise. A lot of great ambient sound effects, especially aquatic ambience, which everyone agrees is the best one. And it has no right being this good, because it's a water level, and nobody likes water levels in video games. But it's really good, and it really plays with a lot of different sound effects, and David Wise definitely has his own style. Let's move on to Yakuza and Tekken. I like to group these two together because their music shares certain similarities. Yakuza and Tekken both feature a mishmash of techno arrangements as well as rock and roll elements, a lot of heavy guitar riffs, and at the same time some danceable elements to it, because these are music that are meant to be badass, they're meant to make you want to move. And that's why in the context of the game you're always beating up people, because Tekken and Yakuza are two games that involve a lot of beating up people. But they do still have some differences here and there. I think sometimes Tekken can be a little bit more heavier on the techno side, and sometimes a little bit more atmospheric, considering a lot of the music in Tekken is tied to the stages. Shout out to Moonlit Wilderness, best Tekken track. And Yakuza, on the other hand, is a little bit more rock and roll, considering it's a very combative game. There's a lot of combat in that game. And also I like Yakuza's karaoke songs too. Those are definitely cool. Let's talk about the Mega Man series, the Blue Bomber. The Mega Man series 1, 2 in particular have really good music. And especially Mega Man 2, almost every single robot master in Mega Man 2 sounds fantastic, and they sound like heavy metal converted into 8-bit, which is what makes it so great, because they still manage to create this very strong heavy metal feel within the limitations of the NES, which is a very weak console when compared to modern standards. And the fact that they managed to have the spirit of heavy metal inside such a limited console is just super impressive. And Mega Man X is just a natural progression of that. It's heavy metal, but in the 16-bit era. Let's talk about Doom. Because while Mega Man had heavy metal elements, Doom was heavy metal. It was as metal as a game possibly could be. And I'm not just talking about the music, I'm talking about like the actual gameplay of it. The presentation of it is just so heavy metal. And it doesn't have to subject itself to too many technological limitations, since it's more of a PC game, and the PC is definitely much stronger than the NES. And it could produce really good music, and you could really hear the music with a lot of clarity. And Mick Gordon's revival of the Doom soundtrack as well, like for Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, the newer Doom games still retain that heavy metal, but somehow make it even heavier with the use of electronic music. Next, let's talk about Street Fighter. The good thing about Street Fighter is that the music is heavily tied to the character. And the music really reflects the spirit, the personality of the character. So you have like Ryu's team, you have Ken's team, you have Guli's team. I mean, all these characters have their own team. And it's pretty awesome that they kind of retain that team throughout the entire series, so it becomes more and more iconic as time goes on. And let's talk about some indie games right now, some indie games with amazing soundtracks that are also very different from AAA games. For example, you won't see a Cuphead soundtrack in a AAA game by a big company. You're just not gonna get something like that. It has to be an indie game. And Cuphead has this 1930s jazz swing tune inspired soundtrack that's meant to reflect that period. And alongside the art style and the overall presentation, it really takes you back to a different time. And I just like how one of the tracks in Cuphead sound exactly like a Benny Goodman track. It really sounds exactly like it, and that's pretty awesome. I didn't expect to listen to Benny Goodman while playing video games, but it's cool. And next, let's talk about Minecraft by C418. One of the best video game soundtracks of all time, just a genius track all around. And the best thing about Minecraft is that it goes in a very ambient direction, so a lot of the sounds that is explored are very minimalistic. They're deliberately soft and they're meant to be in the background. And The nice thing about ambient music, especially in the case of Minecraft, is that you really make up your own mind as to what you want to feel while you listen to this music. Different people are going to feel different emotions while listening to the Minecraft soundtrack. And I'm just not expecting this kind of depth for a video game soundtrack, because usually video game soundtracks are very simple, straightforward and repetitive, but not Minecraft. It's a very unique soundtrack and I find myself liking it more and more as I grow older. And Stardew Valley by Concerned Ape, aka Eric Barone, the same guy who also made the game, he also composed it, he also did the art for it. It's insane how many things that this one guy can do. But the thing about Stardew Valley is the music fits the overall theme of the game really well, because the theme of the game is that you go to this farmhouse and you kind of start your life all over again in this farm. And the music in Stardew Valley is very laid back, it's very chill and it's very relaxing, and I really like that. It also has some really tropical elements or some country elements in there that really suggest that you are on a farm. And we also have the Ori and the Blind Forest soundtrack by Gareth Coker, and also shout out to the Ori sequel, Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Both soundtracks have very similar elements to them. They're both these grand, orchestral and epic soundtracks that really make you feel like you're watching a movie, very cinematic and also very emotional at the same time, considering that Ori, just the game itself, is already a very emotional game and the music just doubles the emotional impact. And lastly, I want to talk about the Planet Coaster theme, because Planet Coaster can be a very stressful game at times when you're building your own theme park and doing all the micromanaging that goes into building a theme park. It's nice to have music that is so soothing, like Jim Guthrie's theme for Planet Coaster. A lot of the soundtracks on Planet Coaster are very relaxing folk music, and it definitely helps distress you because of just how frustrating the Planet Coaster can sometimes be. And let's talk about some of the more epic video game soundtracks. Tomb Raider by Nathan Mccree. As opposed to a lot of video game soundtracks, the more traditional kind at least, Tomb Raider takes its time. The soundtrack does take its time to build up, and it has a lot of very delicate strings, and it sounds kind of mysterious and enigmatic, which is unusual for a video game. But it actually works in the context of Tomb Raider, because you're seeing all these things for the first time. You're discovering treasures and secrets, and listening to Tomb Raider's theme really does make you feel like you really are an explorer and all these things are really wondrous and you're really going on an adventure. And I like how the Tomb Raider theme isn't really as action-packed, because the game really doesn't have that much action compared to the puzzles and the platforming in it. And let's talk about the God of War soundtrack as well, by Ben Mccree. I'm talking about the new God of War, not the old ones, because I think that the old ones had good music in them, but it's really the new one that takes the cake. It's so much better. And I'm so happy that Kratos actually has a theme right now that belongs to his character. It's like Darth Vader. Persona 3, 4, and 5. Amazing jazz-infused, funk-infused tracks that have really good beat and also are really funky with very good elements of R&B thrown in it. So those are some of my favorite video game soundtracks.